So I've been wanting to do an oil temperature test just to see how hot oil gets on like a typical LS turbo setup. So what I did was I plumbed in this oil temp sensor. I just took out my oil pressure regulator, just plumbed that in line, and there's just a cheap sensor inside. Plan on just going for a cruise and not getting on it too much as far as wide open throttle goes, and just kind of see what like cruising oil temperature would be. The car runs at like 175, 180. It's got a 160 thermostat, so I feel like this is a real typical setup that people would have. If you do a temp gun, like a laser temp gun on the turbo right there, it's easily 300, 400, sometimes 500 degrees without ever really getting on the throttle or anything. So I think that's just a real big oil heater. So I was thinking maybe the car might need an oil cooler. So we're gonna do this test and see kind of what temperatures we see just cruising. And then maybe we'll do another test to see what kind of temps we see whenever we're getting on at wide open throttle, and see if the cooling system is enough to actually keep the oil cool, or if it's just keeping the coolant at 180 and maybe the oil's getting to 220, something like that. So I think it'll be interesting to see. After about 20 minutes of cruising, I think the highest I saw was 221 or 223 or something like that. It would really go up whenever I would do any sort of spirited driving, which is expected. Right now it's sitting at about 220. It hasn't really increased or decreased from there, maybe a little bit. Now we're gonna do some sort of low speed cruising through a kind of a naturey neighborhood park thing, and we'll see if it increases from there. So far it's holding about 220, which is pretty good, I think. Could be better. Water temp's about 180, 179. Just cruising like 25 or 30 miles an hour. Temperatures come down a little bit to 215. Still pretty much hovered out around 220 or so. I've been cruising like this for about 10 minutes. I got about 10 minutes back to the highway. So during the whole drive, I never saw above 225, which is good. It did get up there quick though whenever I do any sort of spirited driving. It's not a warm day, it's not a cold day, it's kind of like 80 degrees. So I think if we were doing like 95 degrees or 100 degrees outside, I think the oil temps will get to 230, maybe more before you even do a rip. So I think it'd be beneficial to do some sort of oil cooler. I just shut this off just for so probably on this side it's probably closer to 300. Yeah, 350. So that's why oil gets hot with turbo cars. If your oil's hot, there's no way your coolant's going to stay hot. You can't have 250 degree oil and 175 degree coolant temp. That's just not how it's going to work for you. So the oil temperature does tax your cooling system in some ways, not to an extreme, but it does matter. So I think some sort of oil cooler on this car, even though it's just mostly a cruiser, would definitely be beneficial. So we'll see what we can come up with. So if you're wondering why oil temperature matters, you can go to the Shell website. I run Shell Rotella T4, so I think their website's a really good indication of oil temperature and what you should expect. So basically, you can look at this chart and see that if you currently have a 200 degree oil temp, you can double the life of your oil if you just make it go down to 182. So this is a typo. 200, 250, this should say 225. So 225 is about what I was seeing. If I can get it down to 207, I can double the life of the oil. Preferably I like to get it around 180, 190. We'll see if I can come up with a cooler, or maybe I can make a cooler that can keep up with the temperature.